Name from a Hat Trick. Written by L.A. Witt. Narrated by Greg Boudreaux and Michael Ferraiuolo. Chapter 1. Jace. The second I hit the puck, I swore there was no way that shot was going in. There were too many players from both teams between me and the goal. Hoping for a rebound, I skated to the right, and the goal horn sounded. The entire stadium roared. I whipped around, and my jaw dropped. The glass behind the goal lit up red, driving the point home where the flashing red letters on the reader board that ring the entire stadium between the top and middle levels. Goal! It went in. Holy shit, it went in. It was my third goal of the game, so hats immediately started raining down on the ice as the reader board alternately flashed goal and hat trick. A baseball cap hit my shoulder and bounced off, and I gave the cheering fans a wave as I skated toward the bench to high-five my team. Good one, Kelly. Maddox smacked my glove. Think you can get in another before the end? Me? I laughed. How about you pull some weight? Fuck you. I chuckled. Maddox had scored the Snow Bears' other goal tonight. The Ice Foxes only had 2, and we were almost to the end of the second period. As long as we kept our shit together, something we were kind of notorious for not doing in the third period, we'd have this game in the bag. I still couldn't believe the puck had even gone in. Were the officials sure that was a goal? And that no one else had touched it? Because that would suck. Having my hat trick yanked after the fact when, on review, someone realized what had looked like my goal had actually been an assist. While stadium staff collected the hats littering the ice, I craned my neck to watch the Jumbotron for the replay. On the screen, I hit the puck, and in slow motion it passed between the skates of a distracted defenseman, just missed someone else's stick, and in a split second where the goalie was anticipating the shot from his left, it slid under his leg and into the net. No one else had touched it. The goal was mine, and so was the hat trick. Man, I can't believe that went in, Kuznetsov said as we skated toward center ice. I didn't think it was going to. I shook my head. Guess I was lucky no one was paying attention. Yeah, well, Maddox said, they're probably going to be paying attention now. He had a point. The Ice Foxes were one of those teams that was well known for making stupid mistakes, but only making them once, per game anyway. By now, they all knew damn well how they'd let that goal go, and they'd have their guard up for the rest of the game. Fine by me. We'd beaten them on their A game before, and we'd do it again. Special delivery for tonight's MVP. Scott, one of our trainers, plunked a third of 3 huge cardboard boxes in front of me as I unlaced my skates, and a few hats tumbled onto the floor. When you're done with them, he waved a hand. I don't care. They're not my problem anymore. I laughed as he walked away, and I glanced at the mountain of hats overflowing the boxes. The stadium would hang on to most of them for a couple of weeks in case a fan wanted to reclaim a lost favorite, but that happened so rarely they usually went ahead and let us paw through them first. Some of the guys liked taking them all home. Some just wanted any that were unique or weird. My tradition was to take exactly one and add it to my collection. This would be the 4th hat on that shelf. Of course, if someone called the stadium and it turned out they wanted their hat back, then we'd give it back. But that had literally never happened in the 8 seasons I'd been playing professional hockey. Whatever hats were left would be donated to one charity or another. But first things first, I needed to strip out of my gear and shower, partly because I was sweaty as hell, partly because I needed that post-game ritual to bring myself down. In the hours leading up to a game, I was always a jittery, nauseated wreck, and only the adrenaline of the game itself kept that jitteriness from fucking me up on the ice. Once the game was over and the adrenaline was gone, I had to take some time to pull myself together before I crashed. Lesson learned the hard way. Once I'd showered, calmed down, and changed into something that didn't smell like tonight's game, and once the reporters had cleared out of the locker room, I sat down on the bench to start going through the hats. "Anything good?" Anderson dropped onto the bench beside me. "Anybody send you panties this time?" Guess we'll see. That had been my first hat trick. In between all the hats, someone had tossed in a pair of blue lace panties. 5 seasons later, I still hadn't heard the end of it, and it always came up if someone got a hat trick, especially if that someone was me. "Maybe you got a jockstrap this time," Collier suggested. "Yeah, maybe." I looked up at him, grinning. "If I did, I'll give it to you so you can wear something clean for a change." "Oh," the other guys chimed in. Collier just rolled his eyes. I took another hat from the box and was about to set it aside. It was just a generic Snow Bears hat. There were always a few dozen of those, but it felt different, like it was unbalanced somehow. Curious, I turned it over, and a folded piece of paper had been clipped to the inside. That was definitely new. Though fans did find all kinds of innovative ways to give us notes and little gifts, before the arena had cracked down on security, it was pretty much a daily thing to find a couple of notes under my windshield wiper blades. Tucked into a hat after a hat trick? Oh, definitely new. Not every message I received was particularly friendly or flattering, though, and ever since one of the guys on another team got some death threats 3 seasons ago, I'd had a flicker of dread whenever I opened something like this. I'd had some messages from assholes who wanted me to know I was the worst forward they'd ever seen, that I should go back home and let the professionals play hockey, and a few comments that didn't need to be repeated speculating about my sexuality. Heart pounding the way it always did when I had a letter or a note, I carefully tugged the paper free from its clip inside the hat. It was a single sheet of lined paper, and on it were 2 notes. One in what was definitely a kid's handwriting, the other an adult. I paused to wipe my suddenly sweaty palms on my jeans, then read the kid's half of the note. "Dear Jace Kelly, I'm 11, and I'm a big fan of you and the Snow Bears. For my birthday, I'd really like an autograph, but I can't come to games. Is there any way I can get one? Your biggest fan, Dallas Mackenzie." I stared at the note for a moment. I was relieved it wasn't hate mail or a death threat, of course. But the request definitely had my attention. An autograph? Hell yeah. Anytime a kid wanted one, the answer was yes, no questions asked. A kid who was a fan but couldn't come to games? Definitely yes. But where would I send it? I read on. "Dear Mr. Kelly, as you can see, my daughter is a big fan. She has 2 Kelly jerseys and watches Snow Bears games religiously. We live locally, but because of some medical issues, coming to a game is impossible. Still, it would mean the world to her if she could meet you, or if I could get my hands on a personalized autograph for her. Please let me know if anything can be arranged. Thank you, from your biggest fan's dad, Devin Mackenzie." Below that was an email address and a phone number. I got requests for autographs all the time, and everyone on the team routinely visited children's hospitals and charities, so it wasn't entirely out of the ordinary. This was the first time one of those requests had come to me this way, though, attached to a hat tossed on the ice with no way of knowing if it would actually reach me, or if they'd ever get the chance to throw it in the first place. Hat tricks weren't exactly an everyday thing. It seemed like an overly complex way to reach out to me. But none of us made our email addresses public, and the hockey club or our managers handled correspondence. They passed on fan mail pretty frequently, but a lot of it got lost in the shuffle too. Some fans had told us at signing events and open practices that they'd sent us letters or emails, but never heard back, and we'd been after the relevant staff to stop filtering things quite so stringently. Maybe Dallas and Devin had tried to contact me that way, but the message never got through. Well, either way, I had their contact information now, and I would definitely be sure Dallas got an autograph for her birthday. The morning after the game, I took out the letter and fired up my laptop. "Dear Mr. Mackenzie, I found your note inside the hat last night and wanted to reach out regarding your daughter's birthday gift. I would be happy to arrange to meet her. The team is going on the road tomorrow and won't be back until the 20th, but after that, I'm sure we could schedule something. Let me know. Thank you for the hat, Jace Kelly. I read over the email a couple of times, then sent it and got up to make a cup of coffee. My mind stayed with the email, though. Even after 8 seasons, it was still surreal to have fans at all, let alone fans who would put any real effort into meeting me or getting my signature on something. I was a kid from a small town who had turned out to be good at chasing a puck around on the ice. And ever since I'd been drafted into the league, my world had been completely different from anything I'd imagined while growing up. Even after those league paychecks had started coming in and clearing, I still hadn't given up the 2-bedroom condo I'd had since moving to the city. I mean, I liked the place anyway, but I just couldn't stomach the idea of throwing down the kind of cash my teammates did for huge houses in exclusive neighborhoods. Though I was better than I'd been in my early years, I was still convinced this was all going to be taken away at any moment. The money, the jersey, the contract. Someone was going to realize I was just me, and then I'd be out on my ass and probably on my way back to live with my parents. At least I owned my car and condo free and clear. My email pinged and I almost dropped my coffee. When I checked the screen, sure enough, I had an email from Devin McKenzie. Mr. Kelly, thank you so much for the reply. Having her meet you would be great. I don't really know how these things work, like where or at what kind of event she could meet you. The problem is that she has difficulty with bright lights, the strong smells and loud noise, not to mention crowds. That's why she can't go to games. Those things trigger severe migraines. She has tried coming to team events as well, but those have never worked for the same reasons. So if I'm not pushing my luck by asking, is there any event coming up that will be more low-key? Thank you again, Devin. Ah, so the lights and sounds were the problem, plus crowds? In fact, now that I thought about it, I wasn't even surprised. Games were loud as hell, and the stadiums always had flashing lights, strobes, flickering ads. If they were painful for me when I was dumb enough to show up hungover to a game, they had to be torture for someone prone to migraines. And smells? I could see that. Even from the ice, I could usually smell the hot dogs, popcorn, and pizza. Devin, that sounds miserable for her. I think we can come up with something. I paused, reading and rereading Devin's email and my own half-written response. I glanced at the note they'd stapled inside the hat, and then I had an idea. My teammates were always organizing things for fans, especially young fans. Hockey players in general had an enormous soft spot for kids, and most of the guys were involved in at least 1 or 2 organizations that helped kids or provided fun activities for those battling serious illnesses. During the off-season, Kuznetsov always had kids from one of the cancer treatment centers come shoot goals with him. The charity that Jameson and Collier ran arranged visits to the local children's hospital a few times a year. I went to those events whenever I could. Didn't matter how big or small an event was. If it was for kids and or charity, I was there. For a long time, I'd wanted to organize something myself, but I'd always been overwhelmed by the logistics and the pressure of making sure nothing went awry. Just thinking about it now made my heart start racing and my palms start sweating. 2 years ago, I'd casually pitched an idea to the public relations department, and then had literal nightmares for a week about all the ways it could go wrong. Needless to say, it never got off the ground. Putting together something for a group of fans intimidated the hell out of me. But what if I could make it happen for one fan? Smiling to myself, I finished the email to Devin. Let me work something out. I'll get back to you ASAP. Jace. After I'd sent that, I opened a group chat with my teammates. Hey guys, I want to do something for a fan.
Chapter 2. Devin. Crawling through the afternoon pickup line at my daughter's school, I couldn't help smiling to myself. The closer I got to the front of the line, the harder it was not to just start laughing because I was so ridiculously excited. After 2 weeks of working out logistics, I couldn't wait to see the look on Dallas's face when she found out where we were going this evening. It was going to be a seriously late birthday present. She'd turned 12 3 months ago, but it wasn't like I could plan for a hat trick. Somehow, I didn't think she'd mind. Finally, I made it to the front of the line, and she got into the back seat, dropping her heavy book bag on the other seat. "Hey, kiddo," I said. "How was your day?"
Good.
She pulled on her seatbelt, pausing to give me a wary look.
What are you all smiley about?
"Nothing."
Uh-huh.
The seatbelt clicked, and as I started pulling away from the curb, she added,
You're never in this good a mood after work. Did your boss quit or something?
"Phew, I wish." Facing the road, I stole a quick glance in the rearview mirror. "So we're going to swing by home, but then we have to head back out in like 15 minutes.
For what?
The grin could not be suppressed. "We're going to a small Snow Bears signing event."
A signing?
She gasped.
Oh my God! Are you serious?
I nodded, and I may have scored you some VIP access.
You're lying. Dad, you're lying!
Not lying. I picked up a piece of paper off the passenger seat and handed it back to her. She skimmed over it quietly, then smothered what sounded like a squeak.
A private signing event with select Snow Bears players, including Jace Kelly?
The paper crinkled slightly as if she were gripping it for dear life.
This has to be a joke.
I shook my head. Not a joke. When Kelly got the hat trick a couple of weeks ago, he found your note inside the hat, and there was also a note from me asking if we could get you into one of these events. He's been emailing back and forth with me and—
Wait, Dad! You've been emailing back and forth with Jace Kelly?
Mm-hmm.
For 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks. Stunned silence came from the back seat for a moment, followed by,
Oh my God, why didn't you tell me?
I didn't want to ruin the surprise. Okay, truth was I didn't want to disappoint her. I'd still barely been able to believe he'd reached out in the first place. Even now that we were dozens of emails deep into a thread arranging everything for tonight, I still couldn't believe it whenever my desktop alert said I had an email from Jace Kelly.
I can't believe you've been talking to him.
She paused and, with a wicked laugh, asked,
Did you manage to keep from fanboying him?
Well, it helped that it was all via email, so he couldn't see me fanboying. I cleared my throat. Excuse me. I will have you know I behaved like a perfectly dignified father, trying to arrange a nice birthday present for his daughter.
And you never once let it slip that—
Listen here, kid. I wagged a finger at her in the rear view. You let that slip tonight, and I will show him pictures and videos on my phone.
You wouldn't.
Try me. Silence hung between us for a moment before we both chuckled.
Okay, fine,
She said.
I won't tell, but I probably won't have to.
What's that supposed to mean? Dallas snorted.
Oh my God, Dad, you have no chill when you're around someone you think is cute, and Jace Kelly is famous cute.
My cheeks burned, and all it took was a glance in the rear view to confirm that, yes, I was blushing. She giggled.
See, told you.
Uh-huh. I rolled my eyes. You know, it's not too late to cancel tonight if—
No, and you're serious.
She held up the paper.
This is legit? We're really going to meet Jace Kelly?
I nodded. I don't know how many other players will show up, but he promised me like 10 times that he will absolutely be there.
Oh my God.
She went quiet for a moment, then softly asked,
Do you know how many people will be there? Besides players, I mean?
All I know is it'll be a small crowd, I said. Like a really small crowd. It's probably one of those low-key events like the one at the collectibles shop last year. Dallas sighed with obvious relief. We'd tried to go to signing events before, but they'd almost always ended up being too loud and crowded for her, or some asshat would wear a strong fragrance. Who the fuck wore perfume to a hockey event, and why did they always end up near us? We'd gotten lucky last year with a shop that had booked a couple of the newer players on a day that coincided with some other event, so only about 100 people had come. That had still been rough for Dallas, mostly from the crush of everyone trying to get into the shop at once, but she'd made it through and met the players without much incident. But that had been a fluke. All the other events were huge, packed, and loud. Even open practices had ended badly for her enough times that we didn't try anymore. No matter how much she wanted to meet her favorite players, especially Jace Kelly, it wasn't worth the inevitable aftermath. Her doctors were still trying, as much as my shit insurance allowed anyway, to find the right medication and dosage so she could get through situations like that without triggering an episode, but so far, not much luck. Her current meds were better than nothing and could sometimes stave off the migraine before it really got started, but not enough for her to attend things like concerts or hockey games. It was entirely possible she'd never be able to go to either. Leading up to this evening, Jace had asked tons of questions about what triggered her migraines, and he'd reassured me time and again that he'd make sure tonight wouldn't be too much for her. One of his teammates' wives was prone to migraines with similar triggers, so he'd consulted with her too. I promise, he'd written this afternoon. We'll make sure she has fun and doesn't wind up in pain. Fortunately, even though stress was a trigger for Dallas, this kind of stress, excitement, didn't bother her. She'd take one of her meds before we left, and I'd keep my fingers crossed that Jace and I really had covered all our bases for this evening. Just let her enjoy the event and meet her hero this one time. That isn't asking too much, is it? There was no game tonight, so the stadium parking lot was deserted. I had literally never imagined parking this close to the front door, especially not for $2.
Will he think we're dorks since we're both wearing Kelly jerseys?
Dallas asked on the way in. Is that going to stop us from wearing them? She giggled.
Nope, not at all.
I chuckled as we kept walking. Money was tight, but Dallas's mom, stepdad, and I had scraped together enough to buy her one of the special edition Jace Kelly jerseys during last season's playoffs. She rarely wore it because she didn't want to ruin it, but she had it on tonight. I had on my regular season jersey. Yeah, maybe we looked like dorks going to meet the man while we were both wearing his jerseys, but the jig was already up. He knew we were both big fans.
This place looks weird when it's empty,
Dallas mused as we walked toward the arena doors. It really does. I pushed open the door. It's much quieter, though.
So much quieter.
Inside the cavernous lobby, which was usually teeming with people in royal blue and white on game nights, a man in a suit started toward us, extending his hand. Mr. Mackenzie? Yes? I shook his head. It's just a formality, he said, almost apologetically. But can I confirm that with an identification? I took out my wallet and showed him my driver's license. Perfect. The man smiled. I'm Richard, and I'll be taking you to your event. And this must be our birthday girl, Dallas? Nodding, my daughter shyly returned the smile. Well, happy birthday, and you're right on time. Richard motioned in the direction he'd come from. If you'll follow me, please. Dallas and I exchanged glances, shrugged, and followed him. He led us farther into the stadium, saying over his shoulder, There's a more direct route, but Mr. Kelly told us the young lady is sensitive to fluorescent lights, so we're going to take a slightly longer walk to avoid them.
Oh.
Dallas said.
Thank you. That's awesome of him.
Yeah, thank you, I echoed. We really appreciate the consideration. Absolutely. Richard glanced back at us, smile still firmly in place. Mr. Kelly has been very thorough in checking every detail. None of the stadium concessions are open tonight, so there shouldn't be any issues with smells. Dallas and I glanced at each other again, and she looked as surprised as I was. How many other people are coming? I asked. Oh, this is a private event, he said. Right, but that's wait, Dallas said.
You mean private? Like it's just me and my dad?
That's exactly right. He stopped in front of a door, swiped a badge, and then continued through it. Dallas followed, and at the end of a short tunnel, she gasped. Then I did. We were on the ground level of the arena. The empty arena. Well, empty except for 2 goals set up on the freshly surfaced ice. Above that, the clock on the Jumbotron showed 10 minutes, 0 seconds, beneath huge glowing letters that read, "Welcome, Dallas McKenzie." Her jaw fell open.
Whoa!
Uh-huh, I murmured. What in the world did Kelly have up his sleeve? Because I'd come here expecting a low-key signing event with a handful of people. An empty arena with my kid's name on the Jumbotron? That was unexpected. Richard turned to Dallas. "How is this lighting for you?" She looked around, then shrugged.
It's fine. It's the flashing lights and strobes that bother me when I'm in here. This is good.
"You're sure?" She nodded. With a smile, Richard started down the steps and beckoned for us to follow. "Perfect, come with me." He led us all the way to the row behind the home team bench. "Have a seat." We glanced at each other again, shrugged, and took a couple of seats behind the bench. Then Richard took a radio out of his pocket. "Tell Mr. Kelly his guests are seated."
His guests?
Dallas stared at me.
I thought this was a signing event.
So did I. I turned to Richard. What am I but the sounds of heavy footsteps below us turned my head, and I looked just as a player in Snow Bear's gear emerged from the chute and skated out onto the ice. Dallas gasped. My teeth snapped together. This wasn't just any player in Snow Bear's gear, not with that distinctive sway of his shoulders when he skated or the way he held his stick. Definitely not with the number 22 emblazoned on the back of his jersey beneath Kelly.
Dad.
Dallas leaned forward.
Oh my God.
I know, right? I whispered, fumbling with my phone. Kelly skated a small circle, and he seemed to be taking a few deep breaths before he came back toward us. And jersey or not, I'd have recognized that face anywhere. The vaguely wavy dark hair that curled around the edges whenever he was sweaty and disheveled during a game. That asymmetrical smile that short-circuited my brain. Those dark eyes that would probably kill me if I ever saw them close up. Holy shit. Yeah, that was Jace Kelly. All not quite 6 feet of him. "Dallas?" He called up to her, voice echoing in the otherwise empty stadium. Eyes wide and jaw slack, my daughter nodded. He leaned on the boards in front of the team's empty bench. "I'm gonna get you that autograph I promised, but I thought you might want to watch some hockey first. You good with that?" She nodded again, still mute. His expression turned a little serious as he gestured overhead. "And the lights, they're good?"
They're good.
She called back, her voice hollow as if she were dazed. She probably was. God knew I was. "And the noise?" He cocked his head. "If we're playing, ref whistles, things like that, it can get kind of loud when we hit pucks and stuff."
Yeah, that's fine.
"All right." He looked down the chute and tapped his stick against the boards a couple of times. Instantly, there were more footsteps and noise, and a second later, more hockey players emerged from the chute. Some were in the dominantly white home jerseys, others, including Kelly, wore the mostly blue away jerseys, and 2 referees followed them. Those dressed for home went left, those dressed for away went right, and my lips parted when I realized what was happening. The Snow Bears had divided themselves into 2 teams, and they were getting ready to play.
Dad,
She felt around and then grabbed my wrist.
this is real, right?
Uh-huh. I blinked a few times as I tried to hold my phone steady. Yeah, it's real. And holy shit, it was. While Dallas watched and I videoed, the players faced off at center ice. The clock on the Jumbotron started, and suddenly the Snow Bears were playing for nobody except us. There were no flashing ads, no strobe lights, no roaring fans, no overwhelming noise or strong smells to drive Dallas into a miserable night. Hockey wasn't, by its nature, a quiet sport, but this was a volume level she could handle. Players hitting pucks, calling out to each other, and occasionally slamming into each other and the glass wasn't the same degree of loud that triggered her migraines. The nonstop barrage of noise from a roaring crowd was too much for her. This? Not so bad, as long as she wasn't subjected to it for hours on end. They were also quite clearly playing at maybe 80%, if that. Practice intensity, I suspected, and likely for their benefit more than anything. Fine by me. The very fact that they'd done this at all for my kid was blowing my mind. I wasn't going to quibble over them not playing like this was a cup final. Especially since these were professional hockey players. Even dialed-back intensity didn't exactly mean a boring game. They were all just a little too competitive to not try to win. The puck went back and forth at breakneck speed, and no one was giving away goals. In fact, they were almost 4 minutes into the game before someone finally slipped the puck past a goalie, scoring a point for the away team. The intensity ratcheted up after that, too. A minute later, the home team scored. They still kept it dialed back enough to, I assumed, avoid injuries and muscle strain. But there was only so much professional athletes were going to hold back, even in a friendly competition. Dallas grinned bigger than I'd seen in a long time as she watched from the edge of her seat.
Think we'll see any fights?
I chuckled. Don't hold your breath, kid. They do have a real game coming up.
They're hockey players. One fight won't mess them up.
I just laughed and shook my head. The teams managed to tie up the score with 2 points apiece when time ran out. I was briefly disappointed, thinking it was over too soon, but one of the refs blew a whistle and the teams switched sides. They all paused to let some arena employees shovel the snow off the ice, and then the clock read 10 minutes, 0 seconds again, and the teams faced off at center ice. When all was said and done, they played 2 10-minute periods, and the away team, Kelly's team, won by a single goal. The players skated toward the bench, led by Kelly. "Now you got to see some hockey," he called out with a grin.
I did, thank you.
She paused, then added in a playfully pouty voice,
But I didn't get to see any fights.
Without missing a beat, Jameson, one of the defensemen, gave Collier a sideways shove. Collier wasn't expecting it, and with a yelp of surprise tumbled into Anderson, and they both toppled onto the ice in a flurry of, "What the hell?" and "Damn it, asshole!" Jameson gave Dallas a thumbs up and a big shit-eating grin. Dallas howled with laughter.
Oh my God, I want to be like them when I grow up.
I snorted. I think step 1 is to not grow up.
Ooh, perfect.
As the players disappeared into the locker room, Richard reappeared beside us and smiled again.
Would you come with me, please?
We got up and started to follow him, but Dallas looked back at the rink with a wistful sigh.
Man, that was fun. I wish it wasn't over already.
Oh, don't worry. Richard glanced at her. It's not.